Upsana Begum is a left-wing MP who is currently subject to a reselection process in her Tower Hamlets constituency. Upsana believes the challenge to her position as an MP has been partly orchestrated by her ex-husband, a former Labour councillor, who she says subjected her to a campaign of abuse. Upsana's official advocate has described the selection process as an extension of that abuse. And this process is not the first battle Upsana has had to fight as a Labour MP. After she became an MP, she was taken to court by the then Labour-run Tower Hamlets Council for alleged housing fraud. The case was based on a complaint by her ex-husband's brother-in-law. Upsana was cleared of all charges. The whole situation is disgraceful. It's even more disgraceful because Keir Starmer has done nothing about it. This week, Upsana gave Novara an interview about her experiences. Here she's talking about being taken to court.
I'm grateful for my office team, my campaign team, many local members, many members of the local community, Refuge, Women's Aid, Samaritans, things were so bad for me that you do consider, the prospect of being thrown into prison and just your whole life kind of stops. And there were real moments, definitely, of you contact the Samaritans because you might not want to live anymore.
Gosh.
And I saw that happening to me, and I think what that case brought up for me was just the sheer, it was the sheer venom and the sheer viciousness in the way in which it was pursued, and the fact that we are talking about this case which was riddled with assumptions and biases about, I think, minority communities, about women, about domestic abuse survivors, but the heart of it was, again, it was my ex-husband.
And in the end, you were cleared of all charges. They were found to be kind of unfounded. How did you feel when you got that verdict?
I mean, a sense of relief, and I felt relief for local people, but I do despair sometimes about, the way in which, people are treated, and who knows who else is going through a process like this in the local council. I might have had, a privilege in maybe by the time of becoming an MP, the social capital, and people I could say, what's happening, can you help me? But local people might not necessarily have that network. Yeah. Or that ability to be able to say, this is what's happening and it's wrong, and how is the council sort of got these vested powers where they can try and prosecute you and throw you into prison for, jail sentences of 10 years. But I think it does for me, I think a lot of constituents have said to me, that the Labour Party has got questions to answer on this. How did a Labour-run council do this? What was the national leadership doing and saying throughout this entire period?
Do you see any echoes between what happened to you and, the trial of Lutfur Rahman all those years ago, and the kind of underlying, as you say, prejudices and Islamophobia that might motivate some of that, legal action?
I think what's very clear is that what has happened to me up to now has happened to me because I'm a socialist Muslim woman, Bangladeshi woman, ethnic minority member of the party who has become the MP. That is why this has happened to me. I don't see any other reason why it's happened to me. I don't see any other reason why I'm being treated so awfully by the Labour Party, the hierarchy, the leadership, and how I can be treated in this way, but there can be more sympathy and more care and more attention given to the well-being of other MPs, not from the other Labour Party MPs that are not from the same background as me. I don't know how anybody could look at this situation and say that what is happening to me is happening for any other reason other than factional desire, and factional desire outweighing, the common decency, the basic decency, basic human rights of somebody from my background.
Upsana's story is a complex one, but you would have thought it would have the potential to be explosive. A sitting Labour MP is taken to court by a Labour council. Her allegedly abusive ex-husband is implicated in the case. She's then subject to a reselection campaign, which an independent domestic abuse advocate considers an extension of her abuse. Other than Novara Media, this case has been met with radio silence. There are no investigations by the BBC, no analysis in The Guardian, no phone-ins on LBC. Now, you might respond to this by saying, well, this is a complex story, difficult to understand. It's about internal Labour Party politics. Why would the mainstream media care? Well, as a new Al Jazeera documentary shows, they did care when allegations were made which were way flimsier than the claims made by Upsana Begum. The documentary, called The Labour Files, looks into the various campaigns against members by party officials and the press. This clip concerns a controversy that struck Angela Eagle's constituency of Wallasey in 2016 after they held a meeting after the so-called chicken coup.
Our MP, Angela Eagle, had been very supportive of Jeremy in the meetings where she would come along to constituency meetings and give a report about what had been going on.
According to Runswick, the meeting ends without incident. A week later, a prominent opponent to Corbyn claims that Eagle, who is openly lesbian, is the victim of abuse.
I got a phone call saying that there was a television programme where Tessa Jowell was saying that Angela had been subject to homophobic abuse at the meeting.
I mean, I talked to Angela about her meeting. She faced homophobic abuse at that meeting.
Angela wasn't at the meeting, but the inference was that she was. She wasn't.
Activists and members of parliament and their staff are facing day in, day out harassment and, in some cases, intimidation.
I rang other people who were at the meeting. It was just a complete shock. We didn't know anything about it.
No one heard this, you know. The sort of people you don't use language like that.
There was no homophobia or intimidation at the meeting. It's a very small room, so it would be very easy to hear what was being said by other people.
The national media seize on the story.
There was articles and television interviews saying that there'd been people shouting that Angela was a dyke, that there was homophobic gestures made, and repeated homophobic comments. Then over the days and weeks to follow, the allegations grew into, first of all, it was widespread homophobia.
What happened in Wallasey is to become the playbook of Corbyn's opponents in the party.
What's going on here is very concrete and very outrageous. You've got a sitting Labour MP who's taken to court by a Labour council. The case collapses, and her ex-partner, who an independent advocate, suggests was abusive, was implicated. She's now part of a reselection process, which her independent advocate says is an extension of that abuse. This is a sitting MP. Now, this to me should be a national news story, obviously. The Labour Party is implicated in the extension of a sitting MP's domestic abuse. How is that not a big story? But no one's reported on it. And as I said in my introduction to that video, they are very happy to report on internal Labour Party issues. If apparently an MP who wasn't even at the meeting is subject to homophobic abuse, now I don't know if she was or she wasn't, I wasn't there, but it seems like the evidence on which all of those stories and all of those newspapers and all of those TV shows was incredibly flimsy. Right? And we've got here a case where the evidence is not flimsy and the allegations are way more outrageous. What's going on here? I mean, I know we know what's going on here, but it's so frustrating to witness.
Well, it's very frustrating. And Michael, I think I can sum it up quite simply, really. The Labour leak story would not have been broken by legacy media. Novara Media got access to that document. We broke that story. It was sufficiently important that the Labour Party then had to publish the Ford report several years later. There's a massive report looking into the party. People at the time saying, this is ridiculous, it's irrelevant, there's nothing important there, nothing interesting. Well, the Labour Party's response suggests otherwise. Legacy media, the BBC, the Guardian, the Times, whoever, they wouldn't have touched it because it just wasn't in their interests. And because fundamentally, the people being attacked, being besmirched, denigrated, libelled, were on the left, and they're fair game. We say that all the time, and I know it gets boring, but it's important to hammer that home. On this story in particular, I do agree with you, particularly the angle of domestic abuse and domestic violence, Michael. I am shocked, nonetheless, despite everything I've just said, in regards to the media's treatment of Upsana Begum. It is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. even notwithstanding the points I said about, well, they view the left as kind of fair game, it does really worry me, actually, that a Muslim woman MP, the first hijabi MP, could be treated in such a way, and it doesn't matter for the British media or political establishment. I didn't think that. And I'm a cynic about these people, Michael. I think they're deeply unprincipled, unethical people. And I still thought their response to this would be better. I'd say to everybody watching this right now, please watch the Al Jazeera documentary. It is just absolutely extraordinary and really betokens the moral decay, the mendacity, the lies, and the deceit at the heart of British politics, the norm. It's not a couple of bad eggs or a couple of bad apples. It is absolutely the norm across the media and across party politics. Now, why is that? My theory is, Michael, you have two-party politics, first past the post, very rigid, hierarchical party organizations. They don't want popular pressures. They don't want mass public participation within them. Of course, the Tories haven't really had that. They had a little bit of it with Brexit, but nothing really like Corbyn. And so the minute you have popular participation, people joining, getting involved in the party's apparatus, particularly young people, that was what they've always been saying for years. We want more of that. It was almost like an allergic reaction, Michael. You know, they came out in hives. Well, what the establishment did is, well, they started lying and denigrating and besmirching really good people. And that's what I think angers me the most about the Al Jazeera documentary. Is these are just ordinary working class people who want to improve their communities, participate in the democratic process of this country, and they were lied about by professional politicians 24/7 for 4 years. It is sickening. Angela Eagle, by the way, Michael, let's say it properly, Dame Angela Eagle, she should be stripped of that. There's another gentleman mentioned in that documentary. He's a sitting councillor. He clearly, as far as I can tell, fabricated a note, because there's a note about how Momentum can fix meetings and scupper meetings for their own rational self-interests. Tom Watson says that note is straight out of the militant tendency playbook. Well, actually, yes, it was, because the note was a direct copy of a book review about the militant tendency, which would suggest it's not real. It's a forgery. And yet, despite that, that note became national news, covered by the FT, the Guardian, the BBC, broadcast journalists all over Jeremy Corbyn. Will you condemn this note, which, by the way, wasn't even real? So, yeah, the least serious people in this country all work in SW1, in media and politics. And my God, Michael, are they up their own arse?